We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Living in Boston, the daily commute often means navigating a transit network where trains sit stacked up waiting for clearance through a massive urban bottleneck. Move out to the suburbs and the rail network fades. Here you are trapped in a multi-lane parking lot, burning time on highways that were built to ease congestion, but inevitably breed more of it. Out in the western hill towns, public transportation is underfunded and in some places simply does not exist. Without a car, you are physically cut off from jobs, groceries, and medical care. When towns attempt to fix these broken local systems, whether that means repairing roads or keeping a rural school open, the bill almost always falls directly onto the local property tax levy. That leaves middle-class residents trapped in an impossible cycle. You either accept failing infrastructure or you absorb local tax hikes that price you out of your own neighborhood. Yet this fractured geography is a surprisingly recent invention. Go back to the 19-teens and Massachusetts operated one of the most densely interconnected rail networks on Earth. This map shows the true scale of that lost system. A resident could board a streetcar in the far western hill towns, places like Coleraine or Huntington, and ride the rails continuously, transferring through Springfield and Worcester all the way into downtown Boston. A proposed legislative framework called the Valley Commons Act targets this exact history. The goal is to rebuild that historic footprint for the modern era. By resurrecting those abandoned rights-of-way, the state can physically reconnect its geography without relying on the local property taxes currently squeezing residents dry. This chart illustrates the primary funding engine. After exhausting federal grants, a 1 to 3 cent sales tax surcharge funnels directly into a centralized transit and infrastructure trust fund. Because it's collected at the register, it bypasses the local property tax system entirely. In the Boston area, this trust fund triggers a massive modernization effort, beginning with the full electrification of the existing commuter rail network to allow for faster, highly frequent trains. It also finances the North-South Rail Link. Instead of trains dead-ending at North or South Station, a new subterranean tunnel will allow intercity and commuter lines to flow seamlessly beneath the city. That simple underground connection eliminates the city's largest transit bottleneck, and it does so without raising a single homeowner's property tax bill. The act also reclaims suburban corridors from companies like the Worcester Consolidated Street Railway. These century-old paths are converted into modern, highly frequent light rail lines. Further west, the fund backs projects like Compass Rail to link Springfield and Pittsfield and restores historic rural passenger lines to connect isolated villages that haven't seen trains in decades. The legislation also addresses civic infrastructure by establishing the Rural School Emergency Gap Funding provision. This chart demonstrates how it works. When an isolated district calculates a budget deficit, a gap between state aid, local limits, and their actual operating costs, the centralized fund steps in and fills that exact shortfall. The historical transit blueprint restores the physical connections between towns, while the centralized revenue stream quietly rescues the civic institutions keeping those towns alive. Upgrading infrastructure often makes regions highly desirable, which inadvertently drives up the local cost of living. To prevent displacement, the Act implements a universal basic income pilot program guaranteeing $1,200 to $1,500 a month for eligible residents. It also establishes a new community housing authority with the preemptive statutory power to build subsidized units and enforce rent stabilization. The legislation ensures that residents have an efficient way to travel alongside a solid economic floor to stand on once they get home. Under this framework, the urban commute flows without friction. Electric trains glide seamlessly through the subterranean link and arrive at fully restored transit hubs like the historic North Union Station. The suburban resident reclaims their morning, breezing past miles of gridlocked traffic on a dedicated light rail line built where streetcars ran a century ago. The rural resident relies on high-frequency regional transit to access the city, knowing their local school will remain open without triggering another crippling property tax override. The entire transformation is financed at the cash register, spreading the cost of civilization across the broader economy. By returning to its golden age of transit and reinforcing it with modern economic safeguards, Massachusetts can eliminate the middle-class squeeze and make the entire Commonwealth accessible again. Geographic reconstruction starts in the west by merging the fractured agencies of Franklin, Berkshire, and the Pioneer Valley into a single western Massachusetts Regional Transit Authority. With that centralized planning power, the new authorities are ordered to physically tear down urban barriers. In Springfield, that means executing the removal of I-91, the elevated highway that has cut the city off from its riverfront for decades. By concentrating the initial capital and planning power in the Pioneer Valley and the Berkshires, the legislation reverses a century of economic policy that prioritized the Boston metro area at the expense of the rest of the state. Once the regional authorities are consolidated, the law forces a specific technological mandate. Every single state bus and train operating in Massachusetts must be replaced with zero-emission electrified rolling stock by 2035. For residents who cannot access these rail lines, the Act mandates the universal expansion of the ride and similar services such as FRTA Access, a publicly subsidized door-to-door microtransit service. The network then stretches south into Connecticut, authorizing an interstate rail link that connects Bradley International Airport with Logan, the state rail network. For residents who cannot vote, the legislation also grants municipalities the authority to extend local voting rights to residents as young as 14. Housing, income, and political representation are treated as natural extensions of the transit network. For the islands, the law mandates aggressive subsidies for the Steamship Authority, funding year-round public ferry access and local trolley service to ensure waterbound residents remain connected to the mainland. By tunneling under Boston and subsidizing the island ferries, the Act physically closes the final gaps in the geography itself. The fractured regional pieces are locked together into a single indivisible grid. We are left with a completely rewired map, a comprehensively connected Massachusetts. High-speed electrified rail stretches from the Berkshires to the Atlantic, anchored by dense state-built housing and universally accessible transit. The Valley Commons Act forces a pivot away from a system where towns fend for themselves. It imposes a centralized baseline of living, promising unconditional access to shelter, mobility, and income. By adopting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as its legal guide and grafting subsidized housing onto the rail network, the bill attempts to make physical access to the state a legally protected necessity of life. Thank you to Ariel MA for allowing me to use their footage. Be sure to get out and vote this September. It does count, it does matter. Vote for the most progressive candidate you can find. I personally like Laura Wondolowski, who's running for the empty seat in Franklin County. I've got a lot of balls in the air, but I was going to run, but I am definitely endorsing her. As she has expressed some interest in this legislation, and so has Joe Comerford, Dylan Fernandez, and as well as Lindsay Sabadosa, who wrote a significant portion of it. Actually, so did Fernandez, as well as several other allies in the general court. I basically copied and pasted some good bills. I did write the majority of it, however. Otherwise, please do like, share in this case, and subscribe, and leave your feedback in the comments. I guess scan this QR code for $600. Nobody pays me to do this, and I need food. So scan that thing. It's Nexo. It's a crypto thing, but they give you 12% DeFi assets, and $600 for signing up if you have money there. Put money in there. It doesn't because they pay 12%. It doesn't really matter. If it fluctuates somewhat, because you're getting 12% and you're going to keep the principal, and it'll probably go back up. So that's some financial intelligence for you. That is actually, I would not put that there if it was not a real thing. Yeah, cha-ching. But universal basic income, it's kind of like that, but only if you have it. So universal basic income would be for everyone.
It's free real estate.
Bye. Have a beautiful time.